Let's focus on to this focus onto this now. Matrics and Grade 7s are expected to return to the classroom as early as next week. That's as the country's lockdown regulations will be eased to level 4 as from tomorrow. But teachers' union Sadtu insists schools aren't ready to reopen. Let's get some expert opinion. Senior Research Associate at the University of Johannesburg, Mary Metcalf, joins us now to discuss possible solutions to challenges the education system is facing. Thank you very much for your patience, Mary, and for joining us. Is there a rush really to open the doors of learning given where we are?
Well, firstly, the DG of the Department of Basic Education made a presentation to the Portfolio Committee, but that was part of the ongoing consultation that the department is undertaking. And what we're now waiting for is for what the Minister is going to say to us, either at 4:30 today or whenever she does schedule that press conference. You are correct that Sadtu, but also all of the other unions, have expressed some disquiet about whether or not we're going to be ready. And what's important about that for me is that the country rushes on headlines without always looking necessarily at the detail. And yesterday when the DG presented, he did give some indications that there might be plans to reintroduce grade 12 and grade 7. But he made another point later in his presentation that everybody needs to understand and to assist with addressing the challenges he outlined, because he said that there are certain preconditions and non-negotiables to school opening. And parents need to understand this, and teachers need to understand that, because there's a lot of anxiety about whether or not we're ready. So according to the DG, the preconditions are that we have to have the water and sanitation gaps addressed before we open. We have to have the personal protective equipment in place before we open. We have to have sanitation in place. And in addition to those material realities that need to be in place in every school before they open, he's also spoken about some of the challenges in terms of having sufficient teachers for the smaller class size, having additional teachers for the teachers who are unable to teach because of having underlying health issues or because of their age. So until we have the teachers in place to supplement what's required, until we can socially, physically distance, until we've got all of the material, water, sanitation, and so, he is saying we will not open. Now, that means that the time scale that he indicated as a possibility to the Portfolio Committee has to be tempered and moderated with careful assessments of if we are ready. Now, this is complex. We've got 25,000 schools in the country across very different geographical areas, and I know that the Minister will be talking to the provincial education departments to get detailed updates about readiness. But the public needs to know that we can depend on the department saying we're not going to open until schools are ready, and the anxiety about opening needs to be tempered with that statement.
We're not going to open until schools are ready. Some of the proposals for when we eventually do get there include having no more than 2 pupils sharing a desk, including limiting pupils to 40 pupils in a class, compulsory mask wearing, etc. Let's talk to parents whom, as you mentioned, anxiety at this time quite high. Children are children. They go and they get into contact with each other, and they want to play and they want to touch each other. So what would you say to maybe quell some or, douse down the anxiety?
I think those anxieties need to be expressed. They need to be understood and they need to be responded to. So a class size of 40 still doesn't accommodate the physical distancing required in the level 4 of lockdown. The level 4 of lockdown is requiring a 2-meter distance between individuals. There has to be discussion with school governing bodies, with teacher unions, with education departments to say, how do we achieve this? We need to identify the challenges in achieving it in our small classes with the limited number of teachers we have, and there needs to be compelling and convincing arguments that will reassure parents. If we don't have public confidence in the opening of schools, then the opening will not be a success. We need to take time. We need to give the department time to consider all of these realities. We need to express our fears and anxieties and wait for a process of decision making. So, for example, today, there may be frustration that the minister's postponed the press conference, and she may even postpone it again for all we know. I say we should welcome that, because that postponement means that more work's being done, more consultation is happening, and that decisions will be made on the basis of correct information, on correct science. The one thing we can be certain of at this time of COVID is that there's no certainties. We've got to live with the uncertainties and be ready to make the best decisions for our own health and for the health of others.
Right. Careful considerations need to be made. Thank you very much for your input. Senior Research Associate at the University of Johannesburg.